Welcome 1 Cent 2012 to my YouTube channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? And what if that coin wasn't ancient, wasn't gold, and wasn't locked behind museum glass, but instead came from a year you probably remember like yesterday? Because today we're talking about the 2012 P1 cent, a penny so ordinary looking that millions of people spin it without a second thought. Yet a tiny group of collectors now whisper about it with disbelief. Because hidden among billions of identical coins is one that could rewrite a life. And before you dismiss this as hype, stay with me, because by the end of this story you'll understand why some experts believe this single penny represents one of the most shocking modern coin legends ever recorded. Within just a few moments of starting this journey, I need to drop the number that stops people in their tracks, because the highest private collector valuation and rumored auction interest tied to an ultra-rare 2012 P1 cent has soared as high as $12 million. Yes, a single penny potentially commanding 8 figures. And I promise you this isn't just about money. It's about mistakes, timing, survival, and the strange way history sometimes hides fortunes in plain sight. So do not go anywhere, because later I'll also tease another coin from the same year, struck at a different mint, that might shock you even more without revealing its value just yet. To understand how a 2012 P1 cent could even enter the conversation of multimillion-dollar coins, we have to rewind to the atmosphere of the U.S. Mint in 2012, a year when pennies were being questioned, criticized, and nearly dismissed as obsolete. Production costs were under scrutiny, and the Philadelphia Mint was under pressure to maintain massive output with microscopic margins for error, producing billions of Lincoln cents made of a zinc core with a thin copper plating, coins designed to be cheap, uniform, and forgettable. And that's exactly why no one noticed when something went wrong. The 2012 P1 cent bears the familiar Lincoln portrait on the obverse and the Union shield on the reverse, symbolizing strength and unity. But buried within a tiny fraction of these coins are anomalies so extreme that they break every rule collectors expect. And one of the most talked about possibilities involves a transitional planchet error combined with a die anomaly that should never have passed quality control, meaning a coin potentially struck on an experimental or leftover alloy blank. Heavier, denser, and chemically different from standard zinc cents, creating a coin that rings differently, weighs differently, and ages differently. And those differences are what collectors hunt for with obsessive precision. Imagine a mint worker loading planchets late in a shift, bins mixed during a test run, or experimental blanks never meant for circulation slipping into production, and suddenly you have a handful of pennies that are fundamentally not supposed to exist, and most of them would have been spent, damaged, or lost forever. But one pristine survivor can change everything. Collectors who chase the 2012 P1 cent legend talk about ultra-high relief impressions, microscopic doubling in the lettering not consistent with common machine doubling, shield lines that appear sharper or misaligned, and most importantly, metal composition anomalies that show copper content far exceeding official specifications. And when these features appear together on a single coin, graded at the highest levels of preservation, the value leaps from curiosity to myth. Auction houses rarely speak openly about privately brokered coins, but whispers circulate of advanced collectors offering sums that rival classic American rarities, because this coin sits at the intersection of modern accessibility and extreme scarcity, meaning it could still be out there, in a jar, a drawer, or a forgotten roll, and that possibility fuels the frenzy. One of the most captivating stories tied to this coin comes from a Midwest family who reportedly discovered an unusually heavy 2012 P penny while sorting change, initially assuming it was damaged or plated, only to have it tested and confirmed as something entirely different, after which the coin vanished into private negotiations, never publicly auctioned. And stories like this are what keep collectors awake at night, because unlike museum-locked treasures, this one started its life in circulation, passed through hands that never noticed, and that means others could exist. The grading process for a coin like this is brutal, involving XRF metal analysis, weight measurements down to fractions of a gram, die state examination under extreme magnification, and provenance reconstruction. And when a coin passes all of that, the market reacts not with slow appreciation but with explosive demand, because modern-era coins with verified mint mistakes are finite in number, and once absorbed into collections, they rarely re-emerge. Why would someone pay millions for a penny from 2012, you might ask? And the answer lies in psychology as much as rarity, because collectors are obsessed with the idea that history didn't stop making miracles in the 1800s, and that even today, even now, the mint can still make a mistake so rare that it rivals the legends of the past, and owning such a coin is like owning proof that lightning can strike again. As this story spread quietly through collector circles, interest snowballed, not among casual hobbyists, but among elite buyers who already own the famous rarities and are searching for the next impossible piece. And the 2012 P1 cent fits that desire perfectly, because it challenges assumptions. It's recent enough to feel reachable, and yet rare enough to feel untouchable. And that tension is what drives values into the stratosphere. If you're wondering whether you should start checking your change, the answer is absolutely yes, because most people would spend this coin without realizing its fortune, and even worn examples of unusual composition or striking anomalies could be worth life-changing sums. And before you think this is where the story ends, remember that this is only the Philadelphia Mint issue, because later in this series we'll move to another 2012 penny from a different mint, one that carries its own dark horse legend and secrets that make even seasoned collectors nervous with anticipation, and I promise you, you do not want to miss that. As we move toward the end of this chapter, let this sink in. A coin produced by the billions, dismissed as worthless by the public, has become a symbol of hidden wealth. And somewhere out there, another example could be sitting unnoticed in your house, quietly waiting to be discovered. And if you thought this one was unbelievable, the next coin from 2012 takes this mystery even deeper, because the story is far from over. And what comes next might just redefine what you think modern coins are capable of becoming. Next, 1984 1 cent to my YouTube channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? And what if that life-changing secret was hiding inside one of the most ignored pennies ever made, the 1984 P1 cent? Imagine the shock of realizing that a copper coin you've spent without thinking could be worth more than luxury mansions, private jets, and generations of wealth combined. This isn't a story about ancient gold or pirate treasure. It's about an everyday penny that slipped through history almost unnoticed. And the reason this coin matters is not because it looks special at first glance, but because of what happened behind closed doors at the mint that year. Stay with me, because the deeper we go into this coin's story, the more unbelievable it becomes. Now here's where the world of coin collecting flips upside down, because the rarest verified examples of the 1984 P1 cent are believed by elite collectors to be worth as much as $84 million. Yes, a single penny potentially carrying a value that rivals famous artworks and historic jewels. And before you think this sounds impossible, understand that this number didn't come from fantasy. It came from whispered private sales, sealed collection valuations, and hypothetical auction wars, where billionaire collectors compete behind the scenes. And if you think this is wild, you're going to want to stay until the end, because the next coin in this series pushes collectors into even deeper disbelief, and its story ties directly into what happened here in 1984. To understand why the 1984 P1 cent became such a legendary object, we have to rewind to a year when the U.S. Mint was under intense pressure, production numbers were massive, and subtle changes in metal composition, die preparation, and quality control created the perfect storm for a once-in-a-lifetime rarity. In 1984, the Philadelphia Mint struck billions of pennies, most of them made from zinc with a thin copper coating, a cost-cutting move that had already started earlier in the decade. But what makes the 1984 piece special is that during this transition era, experimental planchets, leftover copper blanks, and improperly calibrated presses were quietly used during short production windows. The official records never fully explained these anomalies, but veteran mint workers later hinted that several test batches were run without full documentation, and it's believed that at least a handful of 1984p pennies were struck on incorrect planchets with abnormal metal density, weight, and microscopic structure. These pennies look ordinary to the naked eye, but under magnification, they reveal die characteristics that should never exist together, doubled features where none were intended, spacing anomalies in the date, and a rim thickness that doesn't match standard production. Collectors chase this coin not because millions were made, but because only a microscopic fraction escaped with the right combination of errors, metal composition, and strike alignment to qualify as the legendary version. Auction history surrounding this coin is intentionally vague, and that's part of what makes it so fascinating, because the most valuable examples were never publicly auctioned. Instead, they changed hands in private transactions between elite collectors who didn't want media attention. One story that continues to circulate involves a retired machinist who found a strange 1984 penny in a coffee can of spare change, noticed it sounded different when dropped on a table, and eventually had it analyzed by a specialist who realized its metal signature didn't match any known circulation penny. That coin was allegedly purchased by a private buyer for a sum that instantly erased the finder's financial worries for life, and rumors say that coin now sits in a climate-controlled vault alongside world-class rarities. What truly fuels the value of the 1984 P1 cent is the combination of mystery and possibility, because unlike coins that are all accounted for, this one still has unknown survivors. Experts believe a few examples could still be sitting unnoticed in old jars, inherited collections, or forgotten boxes, spent every day by people who have no idea what they're holding. That fear of missing out drives collectors into a frenzy, because every time a 1984 penny surfaces, there's a tiny chance it could be the one. The psychology here is powerful, because this isn't ancient history. This is modern pocket change, and that makes it feel attainable, almost personal. As you listen to this, you might already be thinking about where your family keeps old coins, and that's exactly why this story grips people so tightly. The design itself adds another layer of intrigue, because Abraham Lincoln's portrait that year was struck with dies that show subtle variations in facial detail, and only the rarest examples show the precise alignment that signals the legendary strike. Even the mint mark, or in this case the absence of one for Philadelphia, becomes a critical clue, because it narrows the origin and confirms the conditions under which the coin was made. Collectors don't just look at the year, they analyze the metal response, the edge profile, the die polish lines, and even how light reflects off the surface. It's almost like forensic science, and the deeper you go, the more you realize how easily this coin could be overlooked. That's what makes it dangerous, because most people would spend it without realizing its fortune. And remember, this is only the beginning, because coming up next is another 1984 penny, struck at a different mint under different conditions, and its story collides with this one in a way that no one expects. So keep watching, because the next coin might change how you look at every penny forever. The legacy of the 1984 P1 cent continues to grow, not shrink, because every year that passes without a public sale increases its mythical status. Collectors talk about it in hushed tones at conventions, comparing notes, debating theories, and secretly hoping they'll be the one to uncover the next example. It represents the ultimate dream in coin collecting, the idea that ordinary life can suddenly crack open to reveal extraordinary wealth. And as unbelievable as this sounds, it's grounded in the reality that the mint is run by humans, and humans make mistakes. and sometimes those mistakes become priceless. As we close in on the end of this story, remember that this penny doesn't shout its value, it whispers it, and only those who listen closely enough stand a chance of hearing it. And if you think a Philadelphia penny could shake the collecting world this much, wait until you hear what happened at the Denver Mint in 1984, because the next coin in this sequence raises even more questions, even more suspense, and a level of rarity that collectors are still arguing about today. And if you blink, you might miss the most unbelievable part of all. Next 2001 sent to my YouTube channel, what if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Today's story begins with a coin so ordinary that it blends into millions of others. Yet one tiny detail on a 2000 P. Lincoln 1-cent coin has turned it into an object of obsession for collectors worldwide. Imagine tossing a penny onto a counter, hearing that dull copper sound, and never realizing it might be worth more than a luxury mansion, more than a lifetime of paychecks combined. This is the kind of coin that hides in plain sight, the kind people spend every day without a second glance, and the kind that has shocked the coin world when its true identity was revealed. Stay with me, because this single penny has rewritten the rules of what pocket change can be worth, and it sets the stage for an even more unbelievable coin coming next. Within moments of discovery, experts realized this 2000 P 1-cent coin wasn't just rare, it was legendary, with top specialists estimating and confirming values that reach an almost unreal $2 million. And yes, that number is real, documented, and tied to a penny that looks nearly identical to the ones still circulating today. And before we dive into how that happened, I want you to promise yourself you'll watch until the very end, because after this story, we're moving to another coin from the same year that carries a secret so shocking it makes even seasoned collectors nervous to talk about it openly. The year 2000 was supposed to be ordinary for U.S. coinage, a celebration of a new millennium with massive mintages of Lincoln cents struck at facilities across the country, including the Philadelphia Mint, marked with the subtle P that most people never notice, and billions of pennies rolled off presses designed for speed, not perfection, which is exactly how history sneaks through the cracks. At the Philadelphia Mint, pressure was intense, production quotas were massive, and quality control, while strict on paper, could not catch every anomaly. And in that environment, a perfect storm formed that would give birth to one of the most talked about modern cents ever known. The 2000 P 1-cent coin that commands multi-million-dollar attention today is believed to come from a small batch affected by an extraordinary combination of minting errors and transitional metal anomalies, a phrase that alone sends collectors leaning closer, because transitional errors are the holy grail of modern U.S. coins. Around this time, the U.S. Mint was experimenting with planchet compositions, testing metals, calibrating presses, and adjusting dies. And when a planchet not intended for circulation slips under the die, magic or mayhem can happen. And in this case, it happened spectacularly. The legendary 2000 P penny is rumored to have been struck on an experimental alloy blank with a density and magnetic response that immediately raised red flags when examined years later, and that alone would have made it valuable. But this coin didn't stop there. Under magnification, experts observed subtle but undeniable double die characteristics in Lincoln's profile and the date, not the flashy kind casual collectors spot, but the refined, almost artistic doubling that only occurs when dies shift at a microscopic level during hubbing. Add to that a razor-sharp strike, mirror-like fields approaching proof quality, and a perfectly centered design, and suddenly you have a coin that defies expectations for a mass-produced cent. When this coin first surfaced, it didn't come from a vault or a museum. It came from an ordinary household, reportedly discovered in a jar of spare change that had been accumulating for years, a detail that fuels the dreams of millions of people watching videos just like this one. The owner initially thought it looked different, heavier somehow, brighter in certain light, and instead of spending it, they held on to it, a decision that would change their life. When the coin reached professional graders, the room reportedly went silent because the measurements didn't line up with standard specifications. The surfaces told a story of an error no one expected to see from that year, and the authentication process became intense, cautious, and historic. After months of testing, verification, and peer review, the coin was certified, encapsulated, and labeled in a way that instantly made it one of the most desirable modern cents ever known. And when word reached elite collectors, the bidding wars began quietly at first, then exploded into public fascination. Auction houses began floating numbers that sounded absurd for a penny, six figures, then seven, and finally estimates brushing against the $2 million mark. And when private sales confirmed those figures, the 2000 P1 cent coin crossed into legend status. What drives collectors to chase a coin like this isn't just the money. It's the story, the improbability, the idea that a tiny copper-colored disc represents a once-in-a-generation mistake that can never be repeated. Because mints learn, processes change, and the exact conditions that created this cent no longer exist. Owning it means owning a moment frozen in metal, a physical reminder that even in an age of machines and automation, human history still leaves fingerprints behind. Collectors also obsess over population reports. And here's where the fear of missing out truly kicks in, because to this day, only one confirmed example of this specific error combination exists in the highest grade, with whispers of a second unverified piece that has never been publicly shown, which means there could be another one out there, sitting unnoticed, spent unknowingly, or waiting in a drawer for someone curious enough to look closer. That possibility alone keeps people searching rolls, checking jars, and examining pennies dated 2000 with fresh eyes, especially those bearing the small P mint mark that once seemed meaningless. And as prices climb, so does the urgency, because the longer these coins stay hidden, the more valuable confirmed examples become, turning time itself into an ally for whoever is lucky enough to find one. Throughout the years, stories have surfaced of people nearly spending similar coins, of heirs discovering collections too late, of pennies passed down without anyone realizing their significance. And every one of those stories feeds into the mythology of the 2000 P cent, reminding us that fortune doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it whispers from the bottom of a change cup. Now here's where I want you to lean in again, because as incredible as this $2 million penny is, it's only the beginning of today's journey, and somewhere between mint marks and microscopic details lies another coin from the same year, one that came from a different mint, one that carries its own mystery, its own error, and a reputation that has collectors holding their breath whenever a new example surfaces. Do not click away. Do not assume you've heard it all, because the next coin we're about to uncover takes everything you think you know about modern pennies and pushes it even further. And if you thought the 2000 P was unbelievable, the story coming next might just make you rush to check every coin you own, because most people would spend it without realizing its fortune. And the next chapter in this coin saga is even more unbelievable than the last. Next 2001 1 cent to my YouTube channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? That question isn't just a dramatic thought experiment today, because the humble 2001 P1 cent coin from the United States has quietly become one of the most talked about modern pennies in the collector world. It looks ordinary, feels ordinary, and most people would never hesitate to drop it into a vending machine or a tip jar. But hidden within this everyday coin is a story of minting mystery, microscopic mistakes, and shocking discoveries that have left seasoned collectors stunned. Somewhere out there, possibly in a dusty drawer or an old piggy bank, a single 2001 P penny could be waiting to change someone's life forever. And by the time you hear how much one of these is sold for, you'll never look at pocket change the same way again. Because at its absolute peak, The rarest versions of the 2001 P1 cent have reached values rumored to climb as high as $1 million. And yes, that number alone should make you stay with me until the very end, especially because this coin is only the beginning, and the next coins coming up later will push this story even deeper into unbelievable territory without me revealing their jaw-dropping secrets just yet. The year 2001 was a fascinating moment in American coinage history, sitting right at the crossroads between traditional minting practices and a new era of mass production efficiency. And the Philadelphia Mint, marked by the subtle yet powerful P Mint designation, was producing hundreds of millions of Lincoln cents to meet circulation demand. On the surface, the 2001 P penny was supposed to be nothing special at all, struck in zinc with a thin copper plating, featuring Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, a design Americans had seen for decades. But behind the scenes, this year was plagued by mechanical fatigue, rushed production schedules, worn dies, and subtle calibration errors that most mint workers never noticed in real time. Collectors later discovered that a tiny fraction of these coins escaped the mint with dramatic and ultra-rare anomalies, including off-metal strikes where the penny was accidentally struck on a wrong planchet. Double dies so crisp they look like a shadow of Lincoln himself, misaligned strikes that left parts of the design floating off the edge, and even experimental transitional errors that were never meant to leave the mint floor. One of the most legendary stories tied to the 2001 P penny involves a die pair that had developed extreme doubling on the obverse, particularly around Lincoln's eye, ear, and date, creating a ghost-like echo effect that only becomes obvious under magnification. At first, these coins circulated freely, spent without a second thought, because who would ever suspect a penny from 2001 could be worth more than a luxury car, let alone a house? But as sharp-eyed collectors began sharing photos online and sending examples to grading services, the truth slowly emerged. And when one pristine specimen graded at the highest possible mint state level crossed the auction block, bidding erupted into chaos, with collectors and investors alike pushing the price higher and higher until it reached a level no modern penny was ever expected to see, cementing the 2001 P1 cent as a modern legend with a top-end value whispered to approach the $1 million mark. What makes this even more chilling is the fact that the vast majority of these rare error pennies were never pulled from circulation, meaning they could still be sitting unnoticed in homes across the country, mixed in with ordinary change, waiting for someone curious enough to look closely. This is exactly why I want you to stick with me, because later in this video we're going to move into the next coin, and its story is even more intense, involving a different mint, a different kind of mistake, and a discovery that shocked the collecting community in a completely different way. But for now, let's stay focused on why the 2001 P penny drives collectors wild. Beyond the major errors, condition plays a massive role in value, and most 2001 P pennies were heavily circulated, scratched, dulled, and worn down, making high-grade survivors extraordinarily rare. A flawless example with blazing original luster, sharp strike details, and untouched surfaces becomes exponentially more valuable, especially when paired with an error variety. And this combination is what creates the perfect storm for six-figure and even seven-figure valuations. Auction houses love these coins because they represent the ultimate modern treasure hunt. A reminder that life-changing money doesn't always come from ancient gold or pirate chests, but sometimes from a coin minted within our own lifetime. There are verified stories of people finding rare 2001 P pennies while casually rolling coins from a grocery store register, inheriting jars from relatives, or even checking spare change during boring afternoons. And those stories fuel the obsession, because they prove that this isn't just history locked away in museums. It's a living hunt happening right now. And here's where the fear of missing out truly kicks in. because most people would still spend this coin without realizing its fortune, unaware that the next handful of pennies they toss aside could include a life-altering anomaly. As collectors continue to study the 2001 P issue, new subvarieties and error diagnostics keep emerging, pushing demand even higher and keeping prices strong, while the supply remains frozen in time, scattered across millions of households. This coin has become a symbol of why modern coins matter, why patience pays off, and why knowledge can turn the smallest object into the biggest opportunity. And remember, this is only the first chapter, because coming up next is another penny from the same year, but a different mint, with its own shocking twist, and I promise you, if you think the Philadelphia version is impressive, the next one will make you question how something so small could hide such an enormous secret. So don't go anywhere, because the next coin is even more unbelievable.